It is extremely rare to have a new device come into a space and feel like it's changing a lot of ideas around how games are played. How do you deal with different kinds of input? How do you give folks a different space to be able to think about how you make games and also do all of that while having fun, be interesting, be revolutionary, and also be something that is going to get a lot of people talking? I think we have that device, and I want to introduce it to you. It's called the Playdate. Back in 2021, we got our first glimpses of this new device called the Playdate.
This video is about a little box called Playdate.
I love it. What is it?
It's a new thing. It plays games.
Really interesting kind of rollout in terms of the marketing. We had this really cool montage of fantastic developers and really cool games coming out of Portland, Oregon from the folks over at Panic. And then hearing about how all these other games are going to be coming from developers all across the world who are going to be thinking about new ways to make games for a handheld that we've never seen before. You know, really interesting 2-button system, really wild kind of input device in terms of having a crank that you'd be using to, you know, manipulate a whole bunch of different versions of gameplay. And I have to say, I've been playing with this device for about 2 weeks now. I've gotten, you know, through some of the games that have been delivered over the course of a couple of weeks. And I have to say, this is one of the coolest experiences I've had in gaming in a very long time. It has been very rare to see something like this come into market and also be a thing that is really disrupting a lot of the ways that we think about game delivery, ways we're thinking about game input, ways we're thinking about small, really kind of niche and interesting experiences. And I have to say, this is one of the coolest things I've had a chance to review in a very long time. Before we get into the games, I do want to talk initially about the hardware. I think the hardware is really where we're seeing a lot of really cool innovations here. I think, you know, from a design perspective, you know, again, going with that classic 2-button layout and the crank, which is really, really interesting when you think about the way it kind of coincides with a lot of the games. It is really cool to see them think about this in this way of saying, well, what are some ways that we can use such a small form factor to kind of help not only players think about games in different ways, but developers think about games in a different way as well. You know, the screen comes in about 400 by 240 in terms of resolution. Battery life is ridiculous, especially if you have it kind of in idle mode. You have about 2 weeks of idle time and before your battery runs out, about 8 hours or so if you're playing it consistently and constantly. One of the coolest things about this device that I didn't know, I didn't have an expectation for, is when you think about really small devices like this, one of the things that usually gets kind of, you know, looked over or doesn't really get a lot of love is sound, right? Sound on a small device is just really hard to kind of get right. This small device in the Playdate has a really powerful, crisp, nice sounding speaker on it. I think that was really interesting to see how they were going about getting sound into this device in a real way. It comes in with wireless Bluetooth, comes in with 802.11 BGN, 2.4 gigahertz Wi-Fi. It has a built-in mono speaker, stereo headphone jack, condenser mic, and TRRS mic in. That's pretty cool because what happens is you can not only get audio coming from you into when you're taking screenshots and things like that, but it also gives you the space to really think about, and I'll talk about this a little bit later in one game specifically that I was thinking about, but it gives you the space to really think about what's the audio kind of experience that goes along with this device. It is pretty fantastic, I have to say. I've had it on charge for maybe one time, really, in the time that I've had it. I've not really had a lot of worry about the battery dying on me. You know, I've charged it just to make sure that when I got it out of shipping that it was fully charged, so I'd be able to check out exactly how long the battery lasted. And I can say without a doubt, it's not been a problem at all. It's been something that has just been going and going and going and going. And I think that that has been pretty fantastic. The screen itself is really well done. I think, you know, they talked about you being able to kind of play this basically anywhere, you know, being able to play it in direct sunlight, being able to play it in low light. And so far, I've been able to play it in a lot of different locations and a lot of different with a lot of different variables in the space. And I've had a pretty good experience across the board when it comes to the visuals on the device itself. I thought, oh man, this isn't going to really look good. This is going to look really weird in terms of me not having enough light or me having too much direct sunlight or direct light on a thing. And I think with that reflective coating that they put on the screen, it's really given that device a place to shine in a real way. One of the really cool things about the hardware of the Playdate is the fact that it feels really substantial. It doesn't feel like a cheap device. It feels like the team from Panic really paid attention to making sure that this was going to be a device that was going to be able to be used in a lot of different ways, in a lot of different locations, so that you didn't have to worry about, oh, what happens if I drop this thing? Is it going to break on the first time that I potentially drop this thing? It feels like every small part of the device, it was done purposefully. It feels like it was done in a way that was really in care of not only service to the player, but service to the developer. It feels like all of those things really worked hand in hand in terms of the way that this device was manufactured and thought of.
It's the first time they've made hardware, so they got a little help from this company called
Teenage Engineering.
They're over in Stockholm. This guy named Jesper came up with the idea for the crank.
You know, the 2-button configuration, the crank, all of those things feel really well in the hand. The D-pad feels really, really good. It has a nice kind of tactile clicky feel that also is really satisfying in the ways that those things work. You know, plugging a USB-C cable into it. You know, those are small things that when you think about a really tiny device that is fairly thin, you worry about points of failure. You worry about things being not connecting well or not really fitting in those ways. But everything on the everything on the Playdate feels extremely good. It feels really nice to be able to hold it. I think if you do have larger hands like I do, it is going to be a thing that you have to get a little bit used to. I know I've played devices that are really small, and your hands sometimes will get a little bit crampy, especially if you're playing for as long as I have in terms of the gaming space. You know, that's a thing you have to think about, giving yourself a chance to rest your hands. But I think for the time that I've been playing the games on this device, and I've played, you know, a bunch of different kinds of experiences that we'll talk about in a second, but each one of those feels extremely well done and really taking advantage of the hardware in a lot of different ways, not only from a perspective of, you know, control scheme, but just from the ways that things are coordinated. So, you know, having great sound within each of these games and experiences, you know, having different kinds of experiences in different ways that you can interact with the game with the crank has been really interesting to be able to see all of those things kind of come into the space. Speaking of games, again, I have to say this is a really interesting way that Panic is going about the way they want to distribute games. You know, there is a full season, which is about 12 weeks. So you'll get 24 games when you wind up getting your Playdate, and having those be within the mix of this really interesting suite of different experiences, different kinds of games, and different kinds of, you know, ways that you'll be able to interact with all the hardware and software here. It's really cool to be able to see, you know, we had a kind of accelerated version of that for the press, but when I would wake up, I would look at my device and it would be really exciting to see, you know, you have this little package that is on your screen that when you know, hit the button, it does this really nice animation that feels like it's untying a bow and giving you this new game every day. It's really nice touches like that that make this experience something different than what we've seen in the past with other kinds of devices where you had to go buy a cartridge or you had to go re-download something else. When you're buying into this ecosystem, you're buying into this really nice marketplace of games that you'll be able to enjoy. Some of them will be hits for you, some of them won't. You know, there were some games within the suite so far that I've got a chance to check out that were really, really cool. And then there were some that didn't really resonate with me, but it was nice to be able to see, again, this really wild differences between so many different games. And some of them leaned into very classic games like, Whitewater Wipeout, which was a really fun game that was reminiscent of TNC Surf designs on the NES. You had Forest Burns, which was a very kind of reminiscent of a kind of Mario platformer. You had Demon Quest 86, which was super cool, where you're kind of mixing and matching these different items and people to summon demons and then talk to them like in a seance. And then you had Boogie Loops that was really, really cool. Because Boogie Loops was, you know, something I didn't expect, but it was basically a full-on beat-making suite where you'd be able to, you know, through a step sequencer, make all these really dope beats and then potentially play those on the device. And I don't know if you'd be able to share them at some point or how you'd be able to pull them from the device, except, well, actually, I do know. There's a thing that we'll be talking about in a second, but, you know, having all of those things in the mix really brought me to kind of think of what this device is going to be going forward. You know, again, what is it going to look like when season 1 is over? How much is season 2 going to bring? You know, all these games are really, really well done. And it just gave me so many different kinds of experiences that it really, every time I would pick up my device, be really excited about the new game that I was going to have a chance to play and have a chance to kind of dig through and mess around with. It felt like all the games were bite-sized in just the right amount for the time sessions that you'd kind of want to stay on a device with this. And it felt like each one of the developers who kind of put in that time to make these games really wanted to bring joy to every player that they kind of give these to and make these a part of the experience when you're playing around on this device. I have to say the games have been a lot of fun. I'm having so much fun playing through each one of these new things that kind of comes up. You know, there's an audio matching game. There's a game that's reminiscent of the old classic Snake game. You know, there's a golf game where you're putting through an office and trying to, you know, get your ball to the top of an office level and doing stuff like that. A lot of the games just feel innovative, reminiscent of stuff that we've played before, but it has this new twist with the way you're using the crank to input different ways to play these games. And it just makes me really excited to see what's going to come down the pipe for more of the work that's going to happen here on the Playdate and with Panic. I think, you know, all these folks, I'm hoping to see some of these games wind up in the Spawnies or something like that, you know, down the line. But it was super cool to be able to dig through, you know, all of these games and play and have all these different experiences on this really fantastic and really smartly made device. I'm so impressed with everything that the folks from Panic have thought of when it comes to this device. One of the things that I've thought to be really, really smart was they've even given you a way to capture some gameplay from the device. If you're looking to stream it, if you're a streamer and content creator, they've given you a way to do that as well through this app that they've built called Playdate Mirror. So what you can do is you download that to your PC or your Mac, you connect your device to your machine, you then get a facsimile of what that device looks like on your screen that you'll then be able to manipulate not only through the actual device itself, but you can connect a controller to it and play those games with a standard controller. So that means that other folks will be able to engage with these games, and you don't have to just play it on that small device so that you can have that kind of very one-to-one experience. If you want to share those experiences on a much bigger screen, Playdate Mirror will let you do that too. Playdate Pulp is also really cool because then if you're in the development space and you're thinking about ways that you might be able to make a game for the Playdate, or think about that one idea that you've had in your head that you've never been able to get out and said, I want to make it for this device, they have a whole web-based game development suite that you'll be able to use to make games for yourself and for others. You could be able to distribute them and sell them if you want. You can sell them on their store. And you can also sideload any projects that you or a friend might be making and say, oh, well, I have this idea for a thing that I've been trying out. I've been prototyping it. Let me give you the game file. You can sideload it onto the device, check it out, play it. And if it's really good, then figure out good ways that you'd want to distribute that stuff. Really smart stuff from the folks over at Panic. Really brings to the forefront the idea of just how, they're thinking about game development for everyone and thinking about ways that you can be involved, not only from the consumer side of it, but from the person who wants to tinker, the person who wants to kind of learn about game development, the person who was trying to figure out, how far do you want to go with this kind of game making and game development. It's really cool to be able to see, all of those layers kind of fit within that ecosystem and things that you can be able to do with this device, not only on the development side, but on the playing side. It's cool to see all of those things be kind of pulled into account when they thought about the Playdate. Lastly, a couple of things that I hope wind up happening within the next couple of seasons, or, the next season or the next year of the Playdate being out in the world. I would love to see a smaller case. I know they have a flip down case that covers the screen in the front of it. I'd love to see something you can play the device in to make sure that if you do drop it, that it keeps it safe. I would love to see the speaker come out. They had this really interesting speaker that you basically magnetize to the front of it and amplifies that sound. I'm waiting for those to come out because I definitely want one of those as well for my experience. It'll help to charge it, and it'll also help to amplify some of the sounds and music that are coming from it. I really hope that someone develops a music player for it. I think that would be a really dope device to be able to have just sitting on your desk and playing music that you want from various places, especially because you can pull in so many different different kinds of connectivity through Bluetooth or through wireless connections on 2.4 gigahertz and things like that. That would be super cool to see as well. Of course, we gotta have more colors than yellow. I think yellow is just beautiful, but also, I'm a red and blue fan. We have some needs for some of that stuff. Maybe there's some ways to skin Playdates in the future. I think that would be a really interesting thing too. And I would say overall, I don't have anything that would really be a roadblock for having fun with this thing. I think it's been a really just wonderful experience getting a chance to play these really bite-sized games and these bite-sized experiences and feel like each one of them is tailored to someone. I think that's the kind of most beautiful part about the Playdate so far, is that it feels like all of the developers were really, really thinking about how can I bring folks at home some joy? Here's your daily dose of dopeness, right? It's this really cool way to kind of think about the way we play games, think about shared experiences, think about, how these devices are bringing us together through ways that we are thinking about what we get a chance to play every day. It's not always going to be the big AAA title. It's not even going to be sometimes the Steam sale or a thing that's in a kind of store that we usually travel to go get games. Having these things hand delivered and crafted and then given to you really just is nice. It just feels like, again, the folks from Panic have really outdone themselves in terms of how they're thinking about the ways that they want you to feel, the ways they want this device to make you feel through the games that they've curated and put into season 1. And I'm really excited to see what and how all of you kind of come to this device. I've had a blast with it. So major love to our friends over at Pop Agenda and Panic for giving us the opportunity to have this device and play around with it early. We'll be talking to the folks from Panic very, very soon and having them on a show to talk about the device as well. And I have to say, it has just been so fun to be able to get some real FaceTime with this thing and play around with it. When I first got a chance to see it, I was like, oh, this is going to be kind of quirky and maybe potentially kind of, so far out there that it's not going to really land. And I have to say, the Playdate has lived up to all the expectations. It has made me extremely happy to get in some really small bite-sized game time. And I'm just looking forward to playing more of it. And I hope that you get a chance to go snag one and grab it, because it's one of the best experiences I've had this year. So if you have any thoughts, questions, or comments, please leave them in the bottom of this video. So put them in the comments section below and I'll get to those, or hit me up on Twitter at Kahlief Adams and we'll talk a little bit about it there. Maybe we'll have some conversations. Maybe we'll do a Spaces or something like that. Maybe we'll do a special episode around it, or some other layer that where we get a chance to play some more stuff. But I would say if you're in the market for a Playdate, you will not be disappointed. You will definitely have fun with this new and awesome device. So we'll see you very, very soon. Much love to you all. Go have some fun. Go get yourself a Playdate. Peace.